had chordoma, and everyone thought I was bipolar. I needed some Depakote, needed some olanzapine. I needed smiles and face gestures to feel well again. I started learning about neuroscience and Carl Jung, Viktor Frankl, and a master and his emissary. And around the same time, John T. Williams crossed a street just as I did a few days ago and wasn't as fortunate as I was to end up in a hospital with needles in my arms and blood out of my body, and was shot to death and killed by Officer Burke. In a few months previous, before the coronavirus pandemic, Officer Burke showed up in the lobby of an apartment building where I live now with a challenge coin saying, "Excellence." And mathematically, I'm in the correct category with my income. There's nowhere to live in a city with humans living in closets and building second rooms in a room downstairs in a basement to afford an agreed upon amount. Continually increasing and getting higher until a person has to get more jobs and then participate in a system with processes called psychiatry for the rest of their life, for having had cancer, a brain tumor called chordoma, in a city with anarchy and death and violence, and more psychiatric control and limitations for anyone who's under restrictions than Chandler, Arizona, where I grew up, in Toledo, Ohio, where my family lives, away from this state called Washington, where hospitals are treatment facilities and behavior are observations and required days off from studying engineering, mechanical design, building a robot called Mimo for a place called Shriners Hospital and St. Jude Hospital, completing my dissertation called Psychological Cognition and working on an adult version called Quantum Psychology, Quantum Neurology. So people don't see light and want to be in energy. They have freedom to find their energy and sleep and visit a business and not be harassed and not be arrested and not be cuffed and not be stuffed and not be fed a frozen macaroni and cheese dinner for a long ride home in a gas-guzzling vehicle for a governor in a state with Western State Hospital and a Huskies University College with now a Cougars in Washington State. They say it has to have a different name, with a medical school out east for those rednecks and those Republicans who never visit where I speak of now for the safety of their families and the security of their loved ones who don't want to be locked up in a big fat cage called a room in a house with apartments in a building called an apartments building. And after I failed to gather the energy from what I lost when I was stripped naked to my big fat orange boxers and touched and stared at and observed and watched with bright fluorescent lights blinding my eyes and whispers and voices in my ears from psychologists and colleagues and comrades who wanted to give me a CT scan for some more radiation to maybe make me die sooner so they don't have to see me later about a lawsuit for some stupid, nasty woman and her whole squad of cars for a man crossing a street who they said was throwing objects at vehicles and other objects and humans with Tibetan Buddhist tattoos. Om. In a gentle way, you can shake off suffering and poverty and change the world. Om Ahum Bajra Guru Pama Siddhi Hum. And the final walk to a camera, no longer in service now. The end.